Thank you, Tim. Your Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. This year, airlines will collect nearly 5 billion people over 22,000 routes on 39 million flights, and we'll deliver 62 million tons of cargo, making possible $8.3 trillion in trade. Airlines create enormous value by doing all of this safely and affordably. The hard work of everyone in this room is helping to drive economies with tourism, e-commerce, trade and investment, to link businesses to global opportunities, to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and to empower people with the freedom of mobility. Aviation has recovered from the pandemic and is growing profitably to meet the needs of people to fly and to move goods. For 2024, we expect record revenues of almost $1 trillion US. However, expenses will also be at a record high of $936 billion. Net profit will be $30.5 billion. Now, that's not a record, unfortunately, and represents a net margin of just over 3%. But considering where we were just a few years ago, it's a major achievement. And importantly, flying remains good value for money. 77% of the travellers we recently polled said as much. And that's not surprising considering that the real cost of air travel has fallen by 34% over the last decade. And for all the value airlines create, how much profit do we retain per passenger? It's just $6.14. And to translate that into the coffee benchmark that has become an AGM tradition, that buys you a single espresso in this hotel's coffee shop. Now, for those of you who are interested, according to the most recent annual report of Starbucks, they generate a net margin of 11.5%. The best our industry has ever achieved was 5% net margin in 2015 and 2017. Now, I don't begrudge Starbucks their profits, but governments who love to look to our industry for new tax revenues need to understand that our margins are wafer thin, and we rarely earn our cost of capital. This year, airlines in aggregate will earn a 5.7% return on invested capital, and that's well below the average 9% cost of capital. Nevertheless, we deserve to celebrate the hard work that has brought our industry back from the brink. But we remain squeezed between a fiercely competitive environment downstream and the oligopolistic upstream supply chain's lack of competition. And moreover, the best I can say about the supply chain's exasperations of the last few years is that they appear not to have gotten any worse. And on top of that sits onerous regulation. So there is plenty still standing in the way of a sustainable industry-level profitability. Now, we can do it. In fact, overcoming these issues to achieve sustainable profitability is absolutely critical. That will enable airlines to invest fully in the products our customers want and the tools to get us to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. It will also enable us to expand connectivity and its economic and social benefits to waiting people and economies. Now, safety has been and always will be our #1 priority. And we need to work hard to continuously improve our safety performance. We never stand still. That helped make 2023 our safest year by many parameters. There were no fatal accidents among our 336 members or the 433 IOSA-registered carriers. Globally, there was one fatal accident claiming 72 lives, a tragic reminder that safety must be earned with each and every flight. And recent severe turbulence incidents have brought that reminder into sharp focus once again. Our strong safety record and the actions we take to make it even stronger are built on global standards. 2023 marked 20 years of the IATA Operational Safety Audit, IOSA. It's become a cornerstone of global safety standards. And historically, airlines on the IOSA registry have outperformed airlines not on the registry by a factor of nearly 3. IOSA makes a difference, and we are making it stronger. This year, we will conduct 100 IOSA audits with a new risk-based model. Doing this adds an extra focus on pertinent safety risks unique to each audited operator. Additionally, the IATA Global Aviation Data Management Program now captures data from 150,000 flights weekly. And applying developing AI capabilities to this data will give us even more powerful insights on safety. And lastly, we continue to call on safety authorities to publish accident reports in compliance with ICAO Annex 13 of the Chicago Convention. It is a dereliction of duty that only 121 reports have been published from the 226 accidents investigated over the last 6 years. Improving safety needs all 3 of our top tools: audits, data, and accident reports. Now, safety culture is the glue that brings these tools together, and it needs strong leadership. Recognizing the important role that the CEO plays in driving safety across their entire organizations, more than 70 have signed up to the IATA Safety Leadership Charter. It's a commitment to 8 critical principles for continuously improving safety. If you have not yet had the opportunity to sign or need more information, my team is waiting for you at the IATA booth. In the meantime, I am proud to report on another positive performance measure. Our latest Travelers poll shows 97% satisfaction for recent trips. Now, with good results on customer satisfaction, profits, and safety, the state of the industry is strong, and we can make it even stronger by promoting global standards, modernizing business practices, and building a more sustainable industry. So let's start with global standards, a natural progression from safety. There is a major threat to global standards in the Netherlands. The government wanted to permanently cut Schiphol's capacity by at least 40,000 flights annually, ostensibly to address noise concerns. Now, that is a bad choice for a trading nation whose prosperity is linked to connectivity, particularly when where there is a global standard to address noise. ICAO's balanced approach was agreed in 2001. It's enshrined in the Chicago Convention and carries the weight of law in the EU and elsewhere. The Dutch paid no heed to it in their politically motivated efforts to cut Schiphol's slots without consultation. And they had no concern for the worldwide airport slot guidelines, a global standard that was never intended to accommodate such a retrograde and illegal action. We protested, and when the EU and the US joined, the Dutch backed down. Now, it was clear that allowing the Dutch to go rogue on global standards had the potential to create a retaliatory mess. We cannot let governments forget that critical fact. We must remain vigilant. The Schiphol file is not totally closed, and the Belgian authorities appear to be trying to do something similar. Efforts to change airline corporate tax reporting at the UN Tax Committee and the OECD are further examples of endangering the effectiveness of global standards. Currently, airlines pay corporate income tax at their headquarters location. These proposals would have us file in each and every market where revenue is generated. Now, the move is provoked by frustration with how shipping, not aviation, uses flags of convenience to find friendly tax regimes. Now, that's fine, but that is no reason to change the effective way aviation pays its corporate taxes, fully in line with ICAO standards. There is no leakage today, and there is nothing to gain from changing the system. For governments, it would just mean collecting less from their national airlines and spending huge effort and money trying to collect taxes from foreign operators. Only the battalions of accountants needed to manage the reporting mess will be happy if this change is made. Now, fortunately, our arguments seem to be gaining resonance, but vigilance is required to ensure that governments continue to understand that these value-destroying changes serve no purpose for aviation or for their economies. And my last point on global standards is about passenger rights. In August 2023, there was a clear demonstration of the long-held industry position that EU 261 is not fit for purpose. If you remember, UK NATS services collapsed, stranding passengers, crews and aircraft. Now, surely regulators would finally have seen the irony of airlines picking up the tab for care and assistance of passengers on top of all of the costs associated with restarting their operations when this was unequivocally an air navigation service provider failure. Absolutely wrong. Regulators took no notice. And the copycat regulations that we see cropping up in a whack-a-mole fashion in Asia, the Middle East, the US and Canada. EU 261 is not a global standard, and it should not become one via copy and paste regulatory osmosis. It is the epitome of bad regulation. Over 2 decades, poor drafting of the regulation has allowed courts around Europe to create a monster that has added billions to the cost of providing travel. But it has not had any positive impact on delays or cancellations. EU 261 must be stopped and not propagated. Now let's turn from regulatory frustrations to modernizing business practices. You will all be familiar with the benefits of 2 major IATA transformational initiatives. One record is linking participants in air cargo's complex value chain to serve customers more efficiently with a common data model and transparent data exchange standards. And modern airline retailing will serve air travelers better by replacing complex legacy processes of tickets, P&Rs and EMDs with a system of offers and orders that will parallel what most other retailers use. Based on global standards, both initiatives use digitalization, including secure digital IDs, to make customers happier, to reduce fraud, to cut costs, to improve efficiency, and to generate revenue. Now, you may be less familiar with 2 other modernizations. The first concerns aircraft operational data. Now, as operators, airlines must know what data is being generated by the aircraft they fly, and they must have access to it themselves and control who can use it. But that is not the case today. Now, following years of engagement, we are nearing agreement with some leading OEMs to make respecting these fundamental airline needs a standard business practice. The second addresses the impact of the limited supplier community that airlines have access to for their business. With your support, in a give-to-get community approach some years ago, we created a powerful business intelligence tool known as DDS. This brought much-needed competition to the business intelligence market, and with it came lower prices and improved offerings. As your trade association, under your direction and with your trust earned through transparent governance processes, we aim to be the most authoritative source of industry data across the whole range of crucial aviation topics. And why do we do this? Well, first, it creates value for the industry by enabling better informed decisions on key topics from safety to decarbonization. And second, it helps to mitigate the risks of a limited supplier option. A manifestation of that objective is the creation of the schedules database to power IATA's products and services with free access for contributing airlines. It's not a commercial offering, but it is a kind of industry insurance. Knowing that it's there will help keep the data market healthy. Reliable data is mission critical, particularly as we make big decisions on how we decarbonize. Now, achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050 is existential, not optional. This will impact every organization associated with aviation. As a result, many net zero roadmaps have been produced. And we recently compared 14 roadmaps, including our own, and found fundamental consensus. All seek to reduce energy use, convert to clean energy sources, and capture any residual carbon. And to achieve these aims, all agree that sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, is our biggest decarbonisation lever to 2050. But SAF alone will not be enough. We need many levers, and most importantly, decarbonisation is possible. Technology, politics, finance, and other forces will ultimately determine how we decarbonise. But predicting how these will interact over the next quarter of a century offers few certainties, except that convergence will happen as we continuously observe, learn, and adjust whatever roadmap we are following. And that we must help governments build an effective policy framework. Now, on this second point, the greatest sellout, without doubt, has been on the single European sky. And that shows how the political agenda can derail progress. Europe's ANSPs convinced a deal-obsessed Belgian EU presidency to forgo the safety, efficiency, cost, and sustainability gains for the sake of a grubby compromise. The deal protects ANSPs from their customers' needs, and in doing so, it burdens travellers and airlines with inefficiencies that kills a potential 10% emissions reduction for European operations. Now, hopefully, the limited communication around this deal indicates self-awareness in Brussels that it is a shameful result. With all that is at stake, we cannot let this be the end of the single European sky story, and we will keep pushing. And we will also keep pushing on SAF. Now, considering that SAF production this year will equal slightly more than 0.5% of our fuel needs, achieving a 5% emissions reduction through SAF by 2030, a target that was agreed by ICAO, is very ambitious. Now, having agreed to that target, and please, it's very important to remember that it's a government's target, it's not ours. We expect those same governments to help make it possible. And to be blunt, governments must now deliver concrete measures to facilitate the exponential ramp-up of SAF that they are calling for, while not forgetting all of the other decarbonisation measures that are needed. We have consistently held that aviation is a global industry that needs global solutions to eliminate our environmental impact. And I emphasize the plural on solutions. Variety is the key. Everybody does not need to use the same solution, but we do need a set of solutions that are globally recognized and acceptable to take us on our journey to net zero emissions in 2050. And what are the characteristics of such solutions? Well, first, measures must be science-based. Policies cannot be based on assumptions that might be right, because they could just as well be wrong. That's why Europe's intention to force airlines to report their non-CO2 impacts is putting the cart before the horse. There is scientific consensus that we need further data on humidity to quantify the impact of contrails. And getting that data must be the priority. Second, more taxes are not the solution. Government spent years agreeing every aspect of CORSIA. It was to be the market-based measure to address international aviation's climate change impact. The ICAO resolution says 3 times that CORSIA must stand in avoidance of a patchwork of measures, and yet there is no end to the parade of fragmented green tax proposals. Most recently, Denmark brought in a new green tax, and Germany increased its travel tax. Now, we need policies that enable people to fly sustainably, not ground all but the rich with taxes. Taxes that will have no positive environmental impact. Third, unilateral measures must not be extraterritorial. We lost years in policy paralysis when Europe tried to impose its emissions trading system globally. It's a mistake that is not worth repeating. Fourth, measures should anticipate what is needed to achieve them. Now, that's not what's happening with CORSIA. Airlines must soon account for their CORSIA credits. Guyana is the only seller with 4.64 million eligible units available. And that's a very small fraction of the 65 to 162 million credits needed. Where are all the other governments that agreed to CORSIA? SAF mandates face a similar issue. Some governments have mandated airlines to purchase SAF in amounts that just does not exist. And where they've mandated SAF production, there are no mechanisms to protect airlines from bearing the costs of supplier failures and penalties. We witnessed this in France, where fuel suppliers are happy to accept penalties for their failure to supply the SAF mandate. They simply exercise their monopoly power and pass those costs on to us, the airlines. Now, this must be stopped. Fifth, measures must have provisions for review and abandonment if they're not producing the intended consequences. Some good ideas will certainly translate into good policies, but many may not. And when a policy has clearly failed, especially when the costs outweigh the benefits, regulators must have the courage to stop and change track. Six, there is no copyright on successful measures. When a measure produces the right result, others should copy it. We'd like, for example, to see more countries replicate the incentive mechanisms for SAF in the US, tax cuts and grants. Since 2021, US SAF consumption increased fivefold, and there's been a steady stream of investments to boost domestic production. And I think results are well worth looking at and worth replicating. Seven, measures should direct capital towards solutions like SAF. The IATA estimates a $400 billion annual overinvestment in fossil fuels. And at that pace, in 2050, we'll have more than double the oil and gas that is needed in the net zero world that everybody is striving to achieve. Policies redirecting some of this overspent to SAF would find a waiting and profitable market. And finally, measures should envision a sunset. The aim is to set in motion functioning markets for decarbonisation solutions. And once that is achieved, they should survive as normal businesses. Now, that's a long list of parameters, but it will prove its worth if it helps governments filter more quickly to a robust set of decarbonisation policy measures. We'll need all the good ideas, measures, policies, and initiatives that can be mustered. And if all of this seems daunting, consider the progress already made. We have CORSIA, the only global market-based measure to address climate change. The challenge is to make it work. We have SAF, a proven clean alternative to jet fuel. The challenge is to ramp up efficiently with diverse feedstocks and production methods. And we have a common commitment with governments to decarbonise by 2050. The challenge is for governments to deliver enabling policies. And finally, we have many possible pathways to net zero. The challenge is to promote all of them to move forward. We know that decarbonising aviation faces many challenges. We also know that decarbonising aviation is our licence to do business. And most importantly, we know that decarbonisation aviation is absolutely possible. And that's important because aviation has enormous relevance. Business people count on us to support supply chains and connections to customers. Shoppers count on us to deliver their favourite products. Explorers count on us for accessibility to the wonders of the world. Vacationers count on us for family reunions and scheduled respite. Those who have not flown thirst to see the world from a different perspective. And flyers everywhere count on us for the freedom of safe, efficient, and affordable global mobility. And when we asked if travellers hope for the future generations to be able to experience even more of the world by air, 93% said yes. To turn that hope into reality is our ultimate inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your support. Thank you for attending this AGM, and we look forward to a very successful 80th AGM in Dubai.